Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Georgie, for the warm welcome to the stage today. It is an absolute pleasure to be here. And I was just thinking, okay, I'm like an unlikely millennial because I'm literally like, where's the paper program? Give it to me because I don't want to be on my device anymore. I'm over it. And then I thought, well, I'm speaking to these CFOs today. I'm actually an artist. You know, CFO things are not my forte, but I thought I'd bring evidence that I'm subscribed to The Economist. And as you can see, it's gone through a hard time because I like to devour them on my many flights around the world. Georgie's right. I grew up in 15 different countries and actually spent a fair chunk of my life across the African continent, Senegal, South Sudan, Eritrea, and also South Africa. So I've had the pleasure of living in your wonderful country, and it's such a pleasure to be back. I first moved here in 2010, applied to be a permanent resident at the time, which I was granted, which I know is not that easy. So I want to start by saying that I have an immense love, appreciation, and respect for your country and for what South Africa stands for. And I wanted to address that because equally, I know it hasn't been that easy. How many of you would agree that maybe it hasn't been like the best of times, right? I'm going to put these down. Also, I did get quite far. I'm going to tell you, actually, I'm going to confess where I got stuck. Okay, I promised myself that if I was going to subscribe to a paper anything, I would read it back to front. So I've got The Economist, The Guardian, and I told myself, you have to read every single article. Otherwise, you're not allowed to have this subscription. Anyway, so here it says, the trouble with sticky inflation. And then this article goes into like bonds going down, and we thought inflation would kind of teeter out at 7%, globally, and there were some outliers here and there. And I was like, I don't really get all of this. So if any of you feel so inclined to sit with me over lunch, I'm sure we can learn from one another. What I did find interesting, though, about this was just kind of this ripple effect, right, which I really want to address today. Because we can sit in this room and think about things like load shedding. We can think about things like a cholera outbreak in water. But that's actually not okay. And I'm not saying that because I don't have immense respect and appreciation and love for South Africa. I do. You can tell I'm more at home here than I am in my passport country, which, for the record, is the Netherlands. I'm saying this because I admire South Africans for your resilience. And I admire that resilience, but it also almost comes at a detriment. It's almost like, you know what, I'm going to put an inverter up to deal with this. So I want to start by saying I recognize that, I see that, and while I will never understand it, I used to live in Senegal, and we had many power outages, but they weren't for the same reason. They weren't because a so-called grid couldn't handle. They were because actually it just didn't work for a little bit of time, right? So we had a different attitude towards why electricity in Senegal might not be working versus why it doesn't work here. Long story short, I wanted to start by saying that because I think you can take a real moment to actually respect and also appreciate everything that you've done for your country and that you continue to do. So, why great ideas die? It's a huge topic. I kind of wish I'd never called my keynote this. Let me tell you, I made it worse for myself because I actually have a book coming out with the same title. And people are like, wow, I can't wait to read your book. I'm like, can't wait to finish writing it. It's coming out in November, good times. But I always like to look at macro and micro and what's actually going on in our world and how we distill and synthesize a lot of those lessons on great ideas and innovation in the world today, in the 21st century. So some of you might recognize this plane. It's actually one of my favorites. This is a Cessna, wonderful for private flights. This plane is actually, though, about 50 days ago, maybe they found it in the Colombian forest. Did anybody catch that story? Yeah, some of you might have caught it. It was about a flight. It crashed, and all the passengers, except for the 4 children on that flight, died. And those 4 children were 13, 9, 7, and 11 months old. Now, I don't know if there's any National Geographic, I think it's National Geographic lovers out there, but there was this show called I Shouldn't Be Alive. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it's like people that get lost in these crazy places where there's no human chance of survival. And then they're like, I walked 3 meters and I didn't know where I was and I should have died. Well, the forest, the Amazon is an incredibly dense, very, very, very harsh environment. So it was a miracle that after 40 days of searching, over 100 kilometers diameter, right? For these 4 children, they actually found them in this dense forest in the Amazon in Colombia. Now, what's so amazing about this is that there was an 11-month-old baby kept alive by his oldest sibling, a 13-year-old girl. So for 40 days, she stepped into these leadership shoes, kept her siblings alive, dealt with the trauma of a plane crash, and losing her mother on that flight. What they had done, the international community, to try and save these kids is, well, they had like 10 of those search dogs flown in from Belgium. They had rescue committees, professional rescue committees from all across the South American continent come and assist in this search. And they had groups of variety of indigenous peoples that know this forest better than those that don't live in it, come aid in the search as well. But they also had recorded abuela, grandmother, they had recorded her voice. And the search planes would speak the grandmother's voice over the loudspeakers so that these kids, in case they heard it, they would have something to relate to. And abuela, the grandmother, had raised these children. So it was a voice that they could connect to. Now, finally on day 40, they found these four kids in the forest, in the Amazon, in the jungle. And they asked, what would you like? And they were like, dessert. Okay, amazing, right? I love that. I hope they gave them a fantastic dessert. But in further conversations with the family members, they asked the grandmother, why do you think these children were able to survive? How is this possible? This is not a climate in which people survive. And she said, these are children of the world. They are children that understand Earth. And I want to start by sharing that with you because ChatGPT didn't save them in that jungle. So if you understand the depth and the potential of humanity and what has kept us truly alive, what has kept us surviving, it's our innate ability to be human. So if you are worried about AI, which by show of hands, can I get a general sense of who's kind of like, it's a little bit weird? No one in here thinks it's weird? Yeah, right. I'll turn around. I'll cover my eyes. You can raise your hand. No, I know that there's normally about 50% that's kind of like, this is awkward, right? This is kind of weird technology. We're going to address that as well. But remember that it really is not man versus machine. Because in this case, the machine was the plane. But like we heard in the earlier talk today, it's about our collaboration. So we're going to focus on that and focus on seeing the difference that some of these technologies can really make in your businesses today and aid in fostering innovation. So today I'd like you to focus on 3 things: leadership, your own leadership, that of your business, and that amongst your teams. Expectations versus reality. What is actually going on? And which systems are we still using that don't actually allow us to operate at our full potential in the 21st century? And finally, collective intelligence. And the reason I bring up collective intelligence is because I actually feel it is very befitting to South Africa. And I'll explain more about that later. And if we talk about great ideas, we can look at how they happen. We can talk about why they die. and also what you need to do when you get back home. And when I say get home, I mean to your companies, to your teams, to your businesses, to your passion projects, etc. I want to take you to Athens. Have any of you ever been to Greece? Have you had the pleasure of traveling to Greece? Okay, cool. It's one of my favorite countries. You actually know how they used to teach in Greece? I don't mean like 100 years ago. I mean back in the day, Socrates' times. How would they teach? What did Socrates do all day? Okay, first of all, I was in Greece 3 weeks ago, okay, doing a talk on AI for Google. And before I started, the team was like, listen, Jos, the Greeks were very, very passionate later for drinks outside. But when they're in the room, they might be a little bit shy. No one's going to respond to you. And I thought, that's fine, because I'll be in South Africa in 2 weeks, and I know South Africans are loud. And they are not going to leave me hanging as a speaker. But apparently you are. That seems to be what we're doing today. No, but tell me, somebody, what did Socrates do? What did Aristotle do? What did they do all day? They talked. They sat under a tree and they talked, and that's how they taught. They asked questions. What is life? What is the meaning? Why are we here? How can we become better people? What does being a good human man, what does being a good human mean? And they waited. They waited for answers. They philosophized. They discussed. And they grew their intelligence together that way. So I think there's a lot to say for how we teach and learn today, especially when we know we've got artificial intelligence that is able to take over so many of our tasks. So anywho, Greece, 2019, couple of months before the pandemic, I had been living in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. That was country 13 out of 15. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start this new business. It's 2019. We have this learning crisis on our hands. And I know this because I worked in South Sudan at the United Nations. I'd been to South Africa for a long time, and I lived in Bangladesh. All these kids, millions of children around the world, not in school. That breaks my heart. I can't handle it. So I started working on a startup, and really, really cool, what we did is we addressed the future of education. So we would take artificial intelligence, mind you, this is 2019, okay? We took artificial intelligence, we took content, and we wanted to scale this content onto WhatsApp so that every child could have access to their own personal Socrates to talk to every day, 2019. A couple months before the pandemic, I built the prototype. I had a couple of developers in Greece and started approaching schools. And about 1 month later, the world closed down. But especially schools and universities. They were not particularly interested in anything other than getting their students and faculty onto Microsoft Teams. And here I am saying, hey, wait a second. There's this great technology out there. It's called artificial intelligence, and we got to do something with it. We can change learning. So I'd gone and I built this whole thing, right? We would take content and curricula that's already existing at a school. Our second step was to use our AI large models. This was GPT-2, guys. Can you imagine? Did you even know there was a GPT-2? Some of you might have known that. That's what we were using back then. Even other models like BERT, autocorrect, those models, you don't even hear about them anymore. We would personalize this content for learners across the world in over 100 languages. Imagine that. And then we would also take into account things like mindset, because for kids, well, even for adults, how are you feeling today? How are you doing? Mindset is critical in how we show up each day. Anyway, we would ask questions. A learner would get real-time feedback. Then we would close the learning gap and give that feedback also to the faculty, the teachers themselves. So that was my idea in 2019. I can't tell you how many doors were slammed in my face. I'm going to go with like, wow, I don't know, average it out, like, okay, 10 a day. Every email I sent, I would get a no, every single email. And for the yeses I got, that was basically just somebody who was like, yeah, let's have a fun chat about this. My God, I was devastated. I ran out of all my money that I made in Dubai, which, by the way, super hot, really difficult to work in. Yeah, like super hot. Very tricky work climate. And I I put all my money into developing this product, and then basically the pandemic hit. I ended up living back at home with my parents. How many of you had a kid move back in? Well, anyway, I was that kid, okay? My mom would yell up like, any laundry? I'm like, this is not my life. But it was my life, and I had to rebuild it. So in part of that rebuilding process, I started to ask myself, like, what the hell happened here? What went wrong? In all optics, this was a good idea. In fact, maybe now you could agree with me, it was kind of a great idea. But what went wrong? And I never like to sit down and like not do anything or not look at what's presented in my life as a learning opportunity. So I started doing some research, and out of that research started devising some hypotheses on what could have gone wrong. So the first thing I noticed was I needed to really understand my business. Because up until then, really was talking a lot about AI, which nobody really wanted to understand or dive into. But the business was actually changing education. It was actually about helping kids reach their full potential. How many of you articulate your business, even as a CFO, as per what you're actually doing? What is the heart? What is the gut of your business? Because that's very different to what the day-to-day actions might be like. So that pin drop is critical in the fostering of innovation. What are we in the business of? What do we really do? And if you think you have the answer, write it down, and then ask yourself again and write it down in 24 hours. There's a good chance your answer will be different. And the second thing I noticed was this base camp idea. Because despite all the drama that we went through, no one on my team, except for my co-founder, left. And that told me something. I'm like, why are these people still here? Like, I literally can't pay them. Right? We're a startup. No one cares. So I thought, okay, maybe it's the way that we're showing up. Maybe it's the way that we dare to show up in a positive space. So the second thing that felt really true was that base camp idea. What's our mindset? What's our state? Now, I don't need to talk to you about the resilient mindset. South Africans have got that one down pat. I feel like it's innate. It's what you're born with. But there are other mindsets out there, an abundance mindset, right? We heard it earlier in a talk. Don't be fearful of countries that you don't know as well, or countries that you have a preconceived conception of how their market might be growing, because there are some countries across the African continent that are most definitely worth keeping your eye on, as I'm sure you know. So are we looking at it from an abundant perspective? Are we looking at it from an exponential perspective? So whatever that mindset is, are you really applying it to your business with your team? Second is that X factor. What makes our team unique? In South Africa, there's an abundance of skills and a collective intelligence that actually makes you very unique, and you might not even realize it until you leave again. You go to London for a meeting and you're like, dang, it's a little bit stale in here. And then you're like, oh yeah, because in South Africa, we're not like that. But the thing is, when you're in South Africa, you might forget. It might not be so clear, but that X factor lives here. And it's always good to get stronger in what you're already good at. Finally, the other two are positioning, so really putting the client as the hero, and clarity and communication. I don't want to talk about most of them today. I'm going to focus on these two, though, because these, I believe, once you've got the other three, you know, they have to stay aligned. But these two really help me in designing and fostering innovative ideas amongst my team. So if we look at the base camp, let's dig into that a little bit deeper. It's basically small team success. I'm talking about small teams now up until about 10 people, which you will have pockets of, I'm sure, reporting into you. That's a state in their mindset, which is the base camp, plus the momentum. So not only being able to say timing is everything, timing is kind of everything, but it's also if you're presented with something at a certain time, but you don't know what to do with it, timing is irrelevant, right? So momentum is actually key. It means always making sure that your small team is ready to rock and roll no matter what is thrown at them. And for a team to be ready to rock and roll, you're rehearsing every day. You're training every day. You're on that field every day. So you know that as a CFO. You know that as a leader. We heard it earlier. Month end is not the end of the month. It's the first day. How ready is your team to seize that moment? And then finally, aligning with your intention. So go back to that pin drop. What are we really in the business in? This is difficult, I know, but if we can get real about our alignment, We can treat this like a grandmaster chess player. We're watching the moves before they even happen. We can predict our opponent's play in 5 games from now, 5 sets from now. So that's what I'm asking you to do. Align with your intention, your larger intention, and then your psychological safety. Because unless your team feels safe, this is irrelevant. And I'll share with you a little bit more about that later. So that's what it came down to for me. And then I thought, okay, this is going to be applied across work. So if we think about work today, obviously work has changed a lot. And I think, we're still reeling a little bit from the pandemic. Nobody wants to say it. I will say it. It took me a while to get my discipline back. I'm not so sure I'm there yet, because I think as a leader, you're balancing so many things. Put yourself on 2nd or 3rd place at best. And now you have to keep everybody else around you alive and thriving. So maybe, there is still a bit of a disconnect there. So that's one thing that we're still dealing with. And then we're dealing with Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, which happened over a year ago, which has incredible ramifications on all our supply systems, on all our movements, and on our markets. Not to mention that we're in the middle of a war cycle. And this is going to sound really not so great, but it may give you some peace. There's a professor at the University of Amsterdam called Ingo Piepers. I kid you not, Ingo Piepers. And this gentleman wrote a 731-page book called The Thermodynamics of War and Social Evolution. And I'm like, wow, that sounds interesting. I'm going to get my hands on this bad boy. So I found it online in Dutch. Now, I do speak fluent Dutch, but English is my first language. I went to an international preschool in Dhaka. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to read, first of all, The Thermodynamics of War and Social Evolution, 731 pages in any language, but definitely not Dutch. So I emailed Mr. Piepers. I actually wrote him on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, I found this book that you wrote online, and I'd like to buy it, but it's only in Dutch. Do you happen to have it translated in English? If any of you have academics in your life, you know what they love to do, right? They love for you to read their stuff. They're like, wow, someone's going to read my paper? This is great. So this wonderful person messaged me back right away. He's like, absolutely. Here's a PDF of it in English. And I was like, dang, there's no way I can read 731 pages of a PDF on my computer screen. It's just not happening. Plus, he had all these graphs and stuff, which you guys would probably love. Again, I'm an artist. I need a picture, not a graph. So I emailed him back. I'm like, oh, Mr. Piepers, thank you so much. However, is there a way for me to buy the book? I really need the physical book. He's like, you know what? Don't even worry. I'm going to send it to you via post. That was actually a good thing from the pandemic, hey? They got a little better. So anyway, so he... by the way, how to manage that? It's by making sure that whenever somebody comes to deliver something, you're there to receive it and thank them. Like the amount of times I've baked stuff for the DHL people because, I was ordering things. Anyway, I understand. PostNL, Post Nederland, is also struggling a bit. But Mr. Piepers sent me his book, 731 pages. I got through the first 60 and I read them with a highlighter. Just to recap it for you, basically, what Mr. Piepers argues is that we're in the middle of a war cycle which started in 2016. That's when he predicted it. Sorry, it started. His prediction was in 2016 that this would start in 2019. It did. The pandemic. And just to give you a frame of reference, it's going to last for about 16 years. So we're now in it 4. Okay, so we've got a couple left. But the nice thing is to know that we're in it. That helps. And it's nice to know that it's going to end. It's just a nice reminder. It's the same with the markets. And I don't need to tell you that. So when I saw that, and I was like, okay, great. So we'd gone through this relatively stable period. That's actually what it's called. After 1945, largely in Western Europe, we considered that to be a relatively stable period. Now we're going through this war cycle. It is a bit of a weird world right now, but it's going to also be over. So I find peace in that, and I hope that you do too. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I would actually add, by the way, that AI is a component of the war cycle. Whether or not you're afraid of artificial intelligence, whether or not you're worried about it, it is actually a major player in this war cycle because it's contributing to this huge, huge shift that we're undergoing. So we look at all these revolutions, these evolutions in work, and we know that work is changing. And we know that we don't necessarily want to go back to how it was, but we do know that we need to prepare and understand the tools that are available to us as well. And the reason I bring that up is because if we think about the work revolution, I'd like to ask you, how many of you have signed off on a budget line for your HR department that is asking you to hire a chief AI strategist? How many of you are hiring a chief AI strategist at your businesses? One person? Two people? I know you wouldn't be shy about raising your hands on this one. You'd be like, yeah, we are. Love it. Okay, but that's a problem. If you're not doing that, if you're not signing off on that line item now-ish, or whenever your financial year is, that's a problem. You need to have this person on board. You need to have a chief AI strategist that is reading the market at all times and helping your business prepare for the shifts that are about to come. If you don't do that, you're behind. So what are we hiring for, and why are we hiring these people? And I'm not talking about coders or developers, actually. I'm not. Because coding and developing is actually done by AI. Writing text specs is done by artificial intelligence. But getting somebody who can tie all the tools together for you is critical. 1,000 AI tools are being launched each week. So if we look at expectations versus skills, what we're expecting our people to be capable of, or what we want our people to be capable of versus what we actually need, that landscape is changing very rapidly. It is more important that instead of truly understanding artificial intelligence, because it's a bit of a black box sometimes, unless you're a machine learning specialist, it's better to understand how to use it and how to deploy it within your company. Now, over the last couple of days, I heard that some of the small to mid-sized businesses in South Africa might feel like they're going to be left behind because they don't have that R&D budget that some of the bigger companies have. But then how is it that I, with a team of 7 people, can manage that? Why is that? It's because we're prioritizing it. Because I have younger team members that think it's really, really interesting and exciting to play with these tools. And I think it's really interesting and exciting to play with them. Because I have a limited budget, so I need to know which tools are going to help me do my work better and faster. If we think about exponential versus linear, let me start by saying this actually. If I take 30 steps, 30 linear steps, how far am I? Like if I just took them? I mean, I'm a little bit short. But if I was really, average height. 30 meters or so? Okay, I would agree. If I take 30 exponential steps, how far would I go? I mean, I've got my magazine here, so I have plenty of reading material in case you guys want to take your time in answering the question. Just a guess, 30 exponential steps. A million? I love it. No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's wrong, but I'm very glad to hear it. 26 times around the world. That's how exponentials work. And AI is an exponential technology. That means that, first of all, anybody that calls themselves an AI expert, no. It's not possible. The second thing is that it's changing so fast that no matter what I was to tell you today about AI, it's going to be irrelevant tomorrow. So if we think about this, actually this is how even though we know this exponential information, this is still what we think. We think we're just going to kind of be like this, but it's actually like this. This is the kind of graph I like as an artist. It's from a website called Wait, But Why. Very funny, but also very real. So if we think about exponential technologies, AI is one of them, and it's consistently getting extremely good at what it's doing. And if this feels scary to you because you're like, wow, well, then there's no stopping to how bad it would be, that's a really understandable fear. That's a very understandable sentiment. But don't forget that it's only responding to who we are as humans. It's being trained by us. It was trained by us for a very long time. All the data that we've been giving these models. And it actually opens the floor for great ideas. Because great ideas are to be found when we can get rid of tasks that stop us from being genius. If you sit under a tree like Aristotle or Socrates did, and you had a deep conversation where you could be in flow, there was no pressure. You could just be your genius self. You could actually create a really good solution instead of having to put out fires all day. How great would your performance be? That's when you actually create space for your great ideas to happen. So if we know that we have access to this incredible technology that's going to take a bunch of mundane tasks out of our hands, then what we should really be doing is leveraging that innovative spirit at our businesses. Now, say you have a child or children, if any of you have had kids. How many chances did you give your baby to walk, like when it started walking? Were you like, okay, the third time, like you still can't do this thing? Okay, I'll give you 10 because I'm feeling really, kind. No, your baby was, first of all, perfect, and secondly, had as many chances as it needed to walk. Because that's really when the greatness that we have, right? That baby has unlimited potential. And no matter how it feels sometimes being bogged down by systems and bureaucracy, we also have that unlimited potential. There's actually a funny story. I mean, some of you might have heard of this guy called Jeff Bezos. Yeah. He runs this company called Amazon. Well, he used to. I think he's just on the board now. But anyway, Jeff, he was also in the news for this rocket he built, but also when he divorced his wife 2 years ago. Some of you might recall. I always have this feeling that like when Jeff and his ex-wife started dating 20 years ago, that he like took her to a Starbucks, probably in like Seattle. And he's like, hey, my name's Jeff. So what do you do? And she's like, well, I'm an author. I write books. Did you guys know that, by the way? She's an author. His ex-wife, she's written 4 books. Anyway, Jeff's like, really? Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool that you write books. Love it. And she's like, yeah, no, I love it too, but it's really, really hard. Not the writing, but selling my books. Jeff's like, wow, that is a great idea. And I am going to build a marketplace for books. And I promise you, you don't have to quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that's how Amazon got started. Okay? And so then Jeff went on and took this wonderful woman's beautiful idea, built this marketplace around it, and now we're all glued to Prime. But even that, Prime actually started in Amazon in a very funny way because it was proposed by a junior staff member who thought, well, wait a second, we're selling this stuff once off. We really should get some kind of subscription model here. So this junior engineer pitched this idea and Jeff implemented it. Now, while I don't advocate ever stealing great ideas, what did Jeff do in this situation? What did Jeff do as a leader? Yeah, Jeff listened. Jeff listened to 2 things that incredibly smart people around him were telling him and implemented them successfully. Because truly that is what leadership is about. It's about your ability to listen, to open space, and to synthesize on all the great ideas that these super talented people around you are sharing with you each day. That's exactly what Leslie, the 13-year-old whose Cessna crashed in the Amazon about 50 days ago, did. She probably used the collective intelligence of the community that she had learned. So creating that room for great ideas quite practically means you need to do a couple of things in your role as a leader today. Those things include not just understanding tools like ChatGPT, but playing with them. You won't like me for saying this because it's like a dream scenario, but block about an hour in your calendar each day and play with these tools. Or ask someone on your team to play with the tools and give you a summary. If I don't have time to play with them myself, I ask my PA to do this. She's in Mombasa. She's amazing. And she loves it. So she plays with them. She writes me a summary. She's like, yo, these are the great things. These are the not so good things. This is how we could use it. So do this. I don't see any of you writing this down. I find that deeply disappointing. Seriously, I'm serious. But we'll connect in a year. Oh, yes, and then we know now that technology is going faster than Moore's law for the first time, right? So those exponentials are real. And you can use them to solve some of the biggest problems. We actually heard that in this morning's talk, where the gentleman gave some fantastic VR examples. So I won't go too deep into that. I want to talk about that X factor a little bit. We're all in this room together this morning, and we arrived here on a completely different path. Yet we're all here today. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you today is because I want to talk about the X factor that already lives in your teams. That X factor is comprised of 4 things that we have in our daily toolbox, okay? Those are what we know. My reference is 15 countries in which I grew up, 120 that I've been to. I love culture. I love literature. That's a lot of my input, right? How we perceive. Maybe you perceive the world through mathematics. Maybe you perceive the world as a scary place. Maybe you perceive the world as a peaceful place, right? That's how you're perceiving the world. Others around you as well. How you solve problems. Maybe you like to map them out. Maybe you need to talk about them. Maybe you need to journal about them. And how you connect with others. Warm, cold, open, closed, etc. So those are the 4 tools that we have in our toolbox. Now, if we talk about what our most teams comprise of, this is what most of our teams comprise of, right? It's this top performer profile. This is a person who probably has an MBA. They might have gone to a Western-based school. They have a STEM background, experience in business and finance, and a high IQ. I would want to bet that this is a profile that you recognize. I mean, it is so common that when I typed in like top performer on Google, I got David Smith's as an example. David right here, he lives in Marylebone, and he is fantastic apparently, right? So this is what we consider a top performer to be. But what is actually so amazing about South Africa is that everything that you know is so different because you're so complex, layered, and you're so incredibly unique as a culture. How you perceive the world within South Africa and abroad, and even amongst one another, how you solve problems through massive amounts of resilience, and how you connect, which to me always feels very warm. So if we take this as kind of a base, now we're going to build a team that innovates and that can foster innovative ideas at our companies. I'm going to take you through what putting such a team together might look like. First, you've got an MBA profile. This person, team A right here, that's the first person that they have hired onto their team, all right? So that's that typical top performer that we could have seen before. Team B is going to hire the same person. They've got the same profile. Now, team A, super cool. They realize that this guy is quite smart, and they're like, well, we've got more work, so let's just hire the same person because we have more work and we need this person to do this work. And then team B, well, I was kind of awkward because this was now led by this woman, and she was like, well, I'm going to still focus on experience in business and finance, but I can't get the right hire, so my team is already looking to be a bit different, but okay, fine, I've got that, business and finance box checked. Team C, they were out one day in Santon, and they saw this dude, and he was sitting at a table, and so they hired him during lunch, so that worked out really nicely for them. Team B is now kind of on the back foot because, well, there's 2 women there. And so they found this really great guy. They found this great guy with leadership experience who was going through a career transition, who'd already had a business, but didn't want to go back into that grind. So they found this other type of really cool profile. Team A realized they needed some diversity, so they hired this lady. And then team B was like, wow, have you guys heard of this AI thing? It's really taking over. Maybe we should look at getting somebody on our team who understands machine learning. So that's what they did. And then, team A that was their buddy graduated. And then team A was really screwed at this point. They had to hire someone from an art school. Okay, they were down in the pits. So this is what our teams currently look like, and this is the skills profile that we're left with. And I think, you know, team B they just got a lot of skills. And while they start with the same baseline, they've got some things covered. Team B actually has this opportunity to have a really diverse profile. So that's why I'm saying it's already here for you in South Africa, right? It's about maximizing it. And why you need to really think about maximizing it is because this is our world. It's going nuts. We need all kinds of skills to survive in the world today. So if you don't believe me, that's fine, because I ran some algorithms on this, not for you, right? Not because I knew I was speaking to a bunch of CFOs today. I did it because I thought it was interesting. We took this data and we started analyzing, like, okay, all these different team structures, and we've got diverse profiles on these teams. This is just a data set. This is a Monte Carlo model. But I wanted to see, where does it go wrong? Like, why could it be that even if I have that diverse team, or even if I have collective intelligence on my team, why does it fail sometimes? And what actually came out of this, and was echoed by Google, that did a similar study with 200 of their top performing teams, is that without that baseline psychological safety, really fostering that innovative spirit, which means actually taking the time to listen, to talk, to be there, none of this matters. Those skills don't matter. That says which industry do you want to transform. Then it says finance. What do you want your app to do? An investing app that provides insights on stocks with an interface for trading. Click. Creating an app for you in a couple of seconds. What is it generating? User input. I want recession-proof stocks. I'm going to reference Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, Bloomberg, the New York Times, Forbes. Your AI-powered financial insights right there on your very own app, created in 1 minute. What financial insights can I give you today? I want recession-proof stocks. I'm reading all these. I'm reading Bloomberg right now, New York Times. I'm reading Forbes. I'm analyzing stock history. I'm generating results for you. Several stocks performed well during the 2008-2009 recession, including Coca-Cola and that other one, I don't know. This is basically what you are seeing here. What you are seeing here is an app built in 1 minute that reads all of the financial news and generates for you recession-proof stock analysis for a certain time period. I'm going to repeat that. This is an app built in 1 minute that read all the news that you wanted it to read, and then gave you information on recession-proof stocks. I think it's worth. I only have 2 minutes left. Can you imagine? But as a CFO, what does that tell you? Did you lose your appetite? Don't, because the food is amazing. But what I'm trying to say to you is that this is crazy. This can help millions of people around the world understand recession-proof stocks, which you might understand innately. But what am I saying to you right now? I'm giving you a golden tip, which is think 10 steps ahead as a CFO today. No, don't even think about what you're doing next month or in 6 months or in 12 months. If somebody in your business asks you to write a 5-year plan, no, you are writing a 5-week plan. Because very soon, this is going to be on everybody's phones. And I'm not kidding when I say that. And the reason I'm not kidding when I say that is because I will use it. And I know my peers will use it. So this is just one example. This is an incredible example. There's a wait list for this product, but it's real. So, oh, could you please click to the next slide? For some reason, the clicker doesn't want to pick up on that on my side. Cool. I will do very quick what is AI, very quickly. Artificial intelligence has actually been around since 1956 at a workshop at Dartmouth, and these computer scientists were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we devised a machine that could like improve itself? Fast forward, here we are. Not so sure it was still a good idea, but whatevs, we're dealing with it. Okay, then we've got something called machine learning, which is actually the right terminology that you want to use. Artificial intelligence isn't. It's actually machine learning what's happening right now. Also, that app you just saw, that's machine learning. That's also algorithm powered, but largely ML. And the reason why all of this is working right now is because we've got that big data. So that's why it's having a moment is because we've got that big data. We now understand cloud computing, and enough of us have been playing with it for a while, right? So a bunch of people have been playing with this. That's why you see these tools exploding everywhere. I'm so sorry, I'm mindful of time. By show of hands, have most of you given ChatGPT a go? Okay, cool. So that's nice. That's like 80% of the room. I'll just show you something really funny. I have a business, obviously, in AI and education, but I also work as a consultant speaker, but also as a consultant on AI and education for universities, et cetera, around the world. And sometimes I need to do my hours for clients. Okay, you see this spreadsheet? Maybe this excited you. Maybe when you see this, you love this. I hate it. All right, I look at it, I'm like, I don't know what this is. I hate it. I'm already like kind of nauseated. It's read only. I can't deal with this. So now I need to analyze like how many hours did I spend on which task and why am I doing this? It's 2023. No. So I was like, well, let me see what I can do. No, this is really unfortunate. I wanted to show you how I fed all this data into ChatGPT. And it gave me this incredible output and summarized everything, but it doesn't make sense for me. How?
They're bringing our lunch. Oh, is it not?
No, it's not going to play. That's so kind, Georgie. Thank you. Yeah. Well. Describe it, I can, but long story short, I copied and pasted all those rows. Now, for those of you that have engaged with ChatGPT before, you might think, you always have to be polite, right? Like, hi, how are you? Thank you so much for helping me earlier. I mean, of course. But you also might think you need to clean up data before you input it. But you don't. Actually, you can literally copy and paste this mess and say, how many hours did I spend on each task per month? And did I hit my target? And I swear to you, that's what I did. And I wrote the most magnificent email to my clients, which otherwise would have taken me 16 hours. Now it took me about 1. And I had this huge conversation with ChatGPT. I was like, thank you so much. And then, oh my God, kid you not, at one point it was like, you're working 60 hours a week. I think you need to think about work-life balance. So funny. But I'll try and get you that video regardless. I'll try and find a way to get it to you. But long story short, you use it to simplify your life. That's what you need to see this as. Just like the other technologies that have come our way, like fire, right? Can be used for 2 things. So use it to make things easier and better for you. If you have a large employee base, engaging daily, using algorithms to help predict capabilities and understanding where people need to be to execute against their potential. Maybe you have a dispersed dashboard which causes everybody headaches. In fact, if you're spending time on admin, find ways to work with your data teams, get that chief AI strategist on board, and simplify this mess. It really is worth your time in the long run. Do not have heavy software right now. That'll be a major weight on you. Keep your software as light as you possibly can. And you know that your managers are losing huge amounts of time on admin. We always think that hiring an extra person is going to make things better. It doesn't. See what you can use that's already around you first before you bring on new human beings. Take the teams that you have and give them some space to play with the tools that are out there. Your skills as a CFO are adaptability, are creativity, and the ability to innovate on those tools that you just saw that I shared with you, recession-proof stocks in a minute. In this world, Jack Ma had said, it's better that we teach students art, creativity, music, collaboration, innovation. We don't have to focus as much on teaching them what computers can do for us. So bear that in mind as well. Get creative in how you do your work. Be more human. And I'll end with this story of, I'm mindful of time, only doing what works If you're not good at something, hand it over to AI. If you don't know how to hand it over to AI, ask ChatGPT. How can you help me do this? And then it'll be like, here are all the things that I can do for you. How many of you are on GPT-4, by the way? Okay, subscribe to GPT-4. It's about $24 a month, worth it, and engage with it. Do the 80-20 rule at Google. So get your teams to focus 20% of their time on playing, on creating. Some of the things that came out of Google with this rule, where they let their teams work 20% of their time on passion products, is actually Gmail, right? So innovation happens when we remove barriers and when we remove rules. Use your space wisely. This is a green school in Bali. These are kids that actually learn outdoors. Go for a walk. Those are the beautiful things from the pandemic. Don't lose them now just because the pandemic is over. Remember, we're in a war cycle. You still have 13 years. So take care of yourself. Take care of your teams that way. Get your timing right. Timing is critical. Now is an opportunity to make use of the European summer. Maybe your Europe colleagues are taking it slowly. So take your time to upskill rapidly. And think about who and how you're hiring. Do you have that chief AI strategist on board? If not, please get them, because they will make a huge difference for your business. Finally, these kindergarteners. There's an experiment, some of you might have heard of it, where kindergarteners were put up against CEOs, lawyers, and business school students. And these 4 groups were instructed to build a tower, a very tall tower, using just a couple of tools: yard, stick, glue, and measuring tape. So that was their assignment. Build the tallest tower that you can using these tools. Kindergartners, CEOs, lawyers, and business school students. If you had to compete against one of these groups, who would you want to compete against? Who would want to compete against the CEOs? Who do you think you could beat the CEO in building that tall tower? Your CEO isn't here today, so you're fine to raise your hand. Who of you would want to build against the lawyers? You're like, no, I could definitely beat the lawyers. How many of you would want to play against the business school students? Oh, like 2 or 3? Okay, cool. 4, okay, cool. How many of you against the kindergartners? You're like, we could definitely beat the kindergartners. One brave soul. I won't say who. Kindergartners won 97% of the time. They would build a 27-inch tower on average. Second place goes to CEOs at a 21-inch tower. Third place goes to the lawyers at a 15-inch tower. And the 4th place goes to the business school students that built a 10-inch tower each time. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time today. I appreciate it.